Hello, hello. All righty, guys. So I'm very excited today because we're talking about some real challenges that we see around Spinnaker. Uh, so at Armory, the whole focus is around customers. We want them to be successful. We want them to progress in their journey. Where they are when they start with Spinnaker. How do we measure that journey? How they are progressing? Are they really successful, or are they struggling with the nuances here and there? So today, our talk is focused on why customer success is important and why it matters in a company like us, a company like ours, where we talk about product. It's a product company and how it is leading to the product growth. Alrighty, so here we are. Beth?
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here with Sucheta. Thanks, Sucheta, for having me. My name is Beth. I am a lover of puns, movie quotes, and making the lives of DevOps and security folks better. In my past life, I've worked at HashiCorp and Puppet. Both those places, I was a product manager as well. Sucheta?
All right, thank you, Beth. Hi, guys, I'm Sucheta, and I'm working with Armory currently. Been here for over 18 months, came from Cloudera, was there at Informatica, so enterprise software through and through. And I'm pretty excited to be here and pretty excited to present to all of you and talk about the challenges and opportunities that we have in the future. All right, so how do we measure? Why are we talking about customers all the time and how are we measuring their progress, right? So this is how we are actually measuring customer success or customer journey in-house at Armory. When a customer signs a deal with us, how are we thinking about making that customer successful? Or that customer is on their own figuring out ways to install Spinnaker and onboard apps, onboard teams. So how are we doing that? How are we helping that one customer to go from commit to recommit? And how do we do that? A non-event of that kind will be very success criteria for any company, any product company where they say, we want to recommit with you guys after we have seen a success with this product. So when they commit to us, we start talking to them, we start getting engaged with them and trying to see what they're trying to do and what are the challenges are, right? Is Spinnaker the right platform for them? Do they understand what value Spinnaker is going to bring to the table? Right, so we start working with them, we onboard them, and then we talk about the day zero experience. How are they going to install Spinnaker? Is it really easy for them to install Spinnaker? Or are they going to do gazillion circles around setting the right permission, setting the right VPC, load balancers? Where do I install Spinnaker? How many Kubernetes account? Can I have hundreds of Kubernetes account? Can it support it? So all this discussion is happening while we are taking them in the next phase. And while they're moving the next phase, when they have this day one experience of onboarding that one app in production, then their experience and then their, the way they're thinking about adoption is a different challenge then. Then we start thinking about, okay, now, Mr. Customer, you are ready to onboard more use cases, more applications, more teams. So how do we take to a different level of journey? How do we talk about different problems right now? Because you should think about scale right now. You should think about production readiness. You should think about policy, security, compliance, and all these things before you start onboarding more teams. Because in future, you want this platform to be stable enough for all your customers, and you don't want to be the support person for all the teams onboarding on this platform. And then once they see the value, once they see how Spinnaker is the platform of choice for them, recommit happens. And then we start the same thing again, bigger use cases, different journey, different teams. So yes, we are thinking about customers all the time because that is actually defining the product milestones or the product journey for the next good. So this is, every customer, why to be on the right, on the topmost part of this quadrant, high satisfaction and high success. How do we measure it? And is it a tool, or is there a point system where we can say, oh, this is it's a very successful customer, highly satisfied. But how do you define the satisfaction and success criteria for every customer, right? Maybe one app for them is a success and they are highly satisfied. But are they growing? Are they moving further with this platform? And we have Beth, our product lead from Armory. She can talk more about how product is thinking about these issues, these challenges that customers are seeing. And from the face of it, I talk to customers all the time. This is day in, day out. And so I see this flywheel actually moving with all the feedback or with the customer, the journey, where they are in their lifetime. Customers are driving this flywheel, but internally we all know, and I'm sure all of you here also know that this is not just customers, this is our product. How easy our product is to make sure that customers are moving fast from one stage to another and adopting really fast, because this is what we want. But we talk about like fragmented solution all the time with all the customers. We are using Jenkins, we are using Datadog for monitoring, New Relic for monitoring. We have OPA, Open Policy Agent. Can we integrate with that? Can we talk to Terraform? Can we talk to Pulumi? And all these questions are like, it's okay, one-off question, because every customer journey is different. Every customer journey is fragmented. So how do we make sure that we actually give them a comprehensive view of a platform? Maybe this is one shoe fit all kind of situation. Maybe there's some effort that requires to support this one particular use case. But how do we codify that experience that each customer is talking about and make sure that we build a comprehensive solution to satisfy maybe 90% of our customers, if not 100%? And that's where we come in. We get all the experience of every user out there, of every customer out there to our product team, so that they can simplify the experience around building the product. The technology is very complex. We have gazillion other platforms doing the same thing, talking about CD, talking about delivery, deployment. Is it same or is it different? Is delivery same as deployment? I don't know. You guide us. So these are the questions that every customer has when they're onboarding the journey with Spinnaker. And this is something where product team of Armory has actually helped us define some of that experience in a very seamless way. So with us, we have right now Beth. Thank you so much, Beth, for doing this with me. And I don't think so we can make any customer successful without our product team. Thank you so much for joining the call today.
Thank you for having me. And really, it is a team effort. That's the wonderful thing about working at Armory and just having such amazing partners like our customer success and other teams within the organization. Product doesn't work in a vacuum. Engineers shouldn't work in a vacuum, as we can see. They sometimes end up over-engineering things. So thank you so much.
Sure. So let's talk about challenges. And I always talk about challenges. Beth always corrected me, no, Sucheta, they're not challenges. These are the opportunities that is actually opening a way for us to think bigger, to improve our platform. And there's so much scope. There's so much opportunity here that we can do for each customer, for each use case, that this information that we are bringing to the table is actually very valuable. But let me first define the themes, right? Where we are seeing a lot of opportunities or challenges, right? So I have actually identified 5 pillars where we are seeing each customer is talking about. They have their feedback for each of this pillar. They know what the issues that they are seeing and how we are converting that as an opportunity to improve the product. So over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes, we will talk about each of this pillar, starting from installation, configuration, and then the most interesting topic, security and compliance. right? Every financial customer has security and compliance on their mind on the day zero. So this before the installation and configuration, right? It's not even like maybe day negative, right? They're thinking about it, how secure it is, how compliant it is. So let's see uh, how we have identified these challenges and how Armory's product team is thinking about improving this in our experience around the product. All right, let's talk about installation, configuration, and scalability. I know most of you here are nodding. Yes, yes, this is the problem that I have. I really can't install Spinnaker in like one go. I have to sit and configure and then go back and see what have worked, what have not worked. And if I'm extending any microservice, changing any configuration for any microservice, where should I go? Where should I change the config? Should I go touch Halid again, or will it automatically detect it? So how are we thinking about installation configuration, Beth? This is the problem that we have seen, and do you think there's a way forward to it? And how are you thinking about that?
I do. And I think there's a, installation, configuration, scalability. It's a pretty, it's more of an art than a science in a lot of ways. And this industry is just so complex and people are so creative in how they set things up. Luckily, we have some pretty amazing teams that are very creative as well. So we have an operator that we have built out, and this is actually to address some of the challenges that Halyard has. So Halyard does a great job in its day and time. It is a little overly complex, similar to the building that we saw in the previous slide. So we are working with the operator to help to address that. We're thinking about using Cleat in terms of moving away from Halyard and swapping that out. That's more of a long-term thing that we're looking at. The other thing is in terms of the microservices that you mentioned, the operator is going to make it a lot easier, whereas Halyard, you have to basically, it creates a scenario where if you miss something, you're in trouble. The operator is going to help with any microservices that are changed, that it will also change. It'll change everything. So it simplifies that user experience. The other thing that seems like kind of a simple solution and an obvious one when you mention it, but is so critical, is our documentation. So it is something that we are building out and continuing to build out and improve our documentation. We've adjusted the platform in which we deliver our documentation. The team is working on the documentation SIG with Spinnaker so that we can start to create a level of continuity between open source Spinnaker and Armory. And so people don't have to always go to Armory documentation and try to backtrack out. The other one, which is pretty cool, is taking a look at just taking away some of those pain points by creating a SaaS offering or a PaaS offering. So with that, we become your as a service for your continuous delivery and for some of the other parts and pieces that we're talking about. So platform as a service type of a scenario. With that, we made it super simple. So you're talking about the one click and making everything change. That is really the goal there, is that we're going to take on the heavy lifting and the responsibility of managing and maintaining all of that so that our customers don't. So I'm pretty excited to see where we go with that.
Oh, this is huge.
It is huge. I'm really excited. I think it's going to be really beneficial to a lot of our customers. And if you just think about the pain points, you see it all the time, is trying to get people getting that installation and configuration. If we can just remove some of those pains, it's magic.
It is magic. And how are you guys thinking about, or how are we thinking about the scalability, right? Because every now and then I get to talk to this big strategic customers, right?
Mhm.
And they're talking about the next level of growth. It's not about 100 or 200 Kubernetes clusters. We're
Right.
talking about 700, 900, 1,000 Kubernetes clusters.
Yep.
How, what, because then the question is, can Cloud Driver perform? We have seen once we increase the number of accounts, caching takes forever. If we add more accounts, do we need to restart Cloud Driver? Right? So are we thinking about, a way to improve this experience or, ease out this onboarding for newer accounts?
We are, and that's where the Armory agent comes in. So we know that Cloud Driver using the kubectl can cause a lot of performance issues for the large and the extra large installations. So having something like the Armory agent is going to provide that connection into the cluster using a native kubectl libraries. So it's going to allow you to embed the agent into your remote clusters. So I think some of those adjustments that we're making and having just that bridge in between is really the goal there, is to address that scalability and some of those challenges that our customers are seeing.
Oh, this is very valuable, Beth. And I believe we have made an announcement around Armory Agent also. The documents are already out,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
And
So that is GA as of perhaps last month. Yeah, so it's awesome.
right, and we have some early design partners also working with Armory Agent.
Yep.
Yeah, this is good. How about the PCF Cloud Foundry, right? So I don't have much experience around PCF Cloud Foundry, but a lot of our customers do, right? So how are we thinking about the performance over there?
So with that one, that's something that we took over Pivotal's, we took that over from Pivotal. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're creating basically a V2 or a second generation cloud driver that the goal is to solve some of the performance issues and to make it a little more feature complete. So we're going to kind of pick up where Pivotal left off in terms of building that out. So we're working with some of our key design partners that are using Cloud Foundry so that we can, and they're pretty heavy users. So scalability, performance issues, all of that are coming into play as we're starting to build that out. I don't have a lot of the specifics about I don't have the details around how the code is going to work, but that's definitely top of mind for the team that's working on it.
Oh, this is so helpful, Beth. This is really helpful. Okay, so another pillar that actually the theme that we are seeing
Mm-hmm.
is, it is so fragmented. This whole space is so fragmented. Everybody is using the tool of their choice. From monitoring, should we use New Relic, Datadog? We use this. Can Spinnaker support it? Can Spinnaker integrate with it? We use, and for like CI also, right? We use Jenkins. We use this. Can you guys work with this? Can Spinnaker work with this? These are the questions that we get into the discussion every now and then, right? So,
Yep.
and we have seen the experience before, right? Or now, like some customers are extending. If they want to have one particular custom functionality, I have seen some of customers doing that. They
Yep.
will identify which microservice will be affected by this custom
Mm-hmm.
demand or custom stage that they want. Then they'll extend those microservices, change everything, and it is hit or miss kind of situation that many iteration they have to go through it to just develop a simple integration with Spinnaker.
Yep.
So how are we thinking about improving this whole experience, that as a user, I just have to think about just few abstraction layer and not touch any of those microservices?
Right.
Right?
And that's something that we have one of our teams, the extensibility team. They've been putting an awful lot of thought into this. In fact, I believe they're doing some gardening days type activities during Spinnaker Summit. So I would strongly encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about that to sit in on some of those sessions. They're just like a top-notch team. So what we've done is the team has built out an extensibility framework in open source so that anyone can start to build out their own plugin for for a feature functionality that they're interested in. Pulumi is a great example of that. So Pulumi actually partnered with us in terms of creating a plugin, which has helped to build out our provisioning management offering. And so they own it. They're the experts. Pulumi is the experts in Pulumi. We are not. And so that means that any of our customers that might be using Pulumi, Terraform, or anything else have the opportunity to use that VR plugin. We also have discoverability, Nomad, and then we have Policy Engine, but we also are working on a Policy Engine plugin. So that means that anyone in open source can use any of these discrete plugins with the open source functionality or with Armory. Obviously, I would prefer that they use it with Armory, but they can also use those plugins individually. So I think it's a great opportunity for folks that maybe care about, maybe there's someone who really likes the observability tool of Honeycomb. They can work and build that out and have that as observability functionality and capability. And they don't need us, and they don't need to wait for us to add it to our roadmap. That's something that they can just get going with it.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of this ask around observability, right?
Yep.
How do you look in at the Spinnaker about the logs, about the monitoring stats, right? And I have seen the different customers trying to extend these microservices to cater their needs, right? Will that be part of plugin too? Can that be a plugin?
My understanding with the discoverability is we have built out the beginnings of that. I believe the discoverability plugin is based on using Splunk, which is very like Splunk. I feel like you could do just about anything with the Splunk functionality. Yeah. So yep, that is the goal with the extensibility framework, that if you just need to send something off to your own tool set, you get to do that. And that is just part of the extensibility of the Armory platform. Or, wow, yeah. Or you can use it with Spinnaker open source.
This is amazing, because one thing that I'm thinking that with how customers are extending the microservices, the upgrade used to fail.
Yes.
Right. So they have to take care of all these things before they start to plan their upgrade. And yep. Then I've seen that they'll be on a very older version of Spinnaker because they are not very comfortable upgrading to the latest one, and they miss out on all the features and enhancements.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's a tale as old as time, if you will, right? In this area, it's really hard. You have everything set up the way that you want, and even though there might be a new feature that you're interested in, you don't want to screw up the fact that everything just works right now. So that is something that we're keeping in mind as we're starting to build out the extensibility and some of the other features. Is people just want things to just work. Every release or every version bump, you don't want to have to recreate your infrastructure. You don't want to have to then recreate your continuous delivery pipelines. You don't want to have to do any of that. So it's definitely top of mind.
Right. So how about when we're talking about Spinnaker, the extensibility framework / plugins, right? So there's so much fragmentation around infrastructure as a code, right?
Yes.
We're using Terraform, we are using Pulumi, we are using something else, right? And we get into the discussion again, like, what are your guidance on all these technologies? Should we have to trash them out or build something new to support Spinnaker? Or can we bring that along while we are exploring Spinnaker?
Yes, and that is definitely something that I have spent a lot of time thinking about. So just having worked at Puppet, working at HashiCorp, you have all these different infrastructure as code tools, and all the disparate tools that end up being in play at a different at an organization, it could be massive. And then if you think about it, you have all those tools, all those different ways of provisioning your infrastructure and your applications. But then how do you create one standard in terms of delivering your code safely? So one of the things that we are looking at is creating that with our provisioning management is automating and templatizing that infrastructure and helping people to build out the policies into the infrastructure, including the concept of least privilege, which is always important. And then making sure that you can save and maintain the information. And that is all well and good, that you have the ability to templatize your infrastructure and automate everything. But the other thing that we're looking at, and why I like to call it provisioning management, is because it gives us, what we're doing is we have the ability that if you're using Terraform open source, you're using Terraform Enterprise or Cloud, or you're using right now Pulumi, you can continue to use all of those across your different teams without adjusting. And then you can just use that to provision your S3 bucket, Kubernetes, and everything else. And it just ties into, it's just going to work with Spinnaker. So you don't have to change that logic. We've adjusted our logic to work with those different tooling, which I think is incredibly powerful for organizations, because you can do that one and done, or create like a golden pipeline and just like feel really good about the fact that all those guardrails that you've set in place, it doesn't matter how they're provisioning it. And I think the extensibility, if we tie back to the extensibility framework, the amazing thing there is that if you have Puppet, Chef, Ansible, you have your own homegrown system, then you have the ability to create a plugin with the extensibility platform, the extensibility offering, and you can incorporate that as well. So then you can continue to expand out, and will continue to expand out as well. It's not that you have to do it all, but because we have that framework, if you have something that is custom to you, you get to build that and have that common platform feel, which.
Got it. Now, this is really good, because then you're not running in like different places and trying to make sure that what I need to do now, then do this. It's like you are tying that infrastructure, you're tying the plugins, you're tying everything in this one platform.
Yes.
Right. And how are you thinking about improving the developer experience, right? Because right now you have to get your smartest engineers, believe me, to work with Spinnaker. Right. So many configuration required to set this one stage, to create that first pipeline, and to educate them why you need so many config for this one, maybe deploy state, or maybe run your Jenkins webhook, or anything that you want to do with Spinnaker right now. The UI is not very, what do you call, the user experience around UI is, I think,
it could use some
can
help.
be improved. It can be improved, right? So
yes.
Right. How, and there are so many things around that. How do we reuse all these, the effort that we're putting in right now, right? Can we take this pipeline template? Can we define a master template out of it? Can we make it nested? Can we just have template for each stages? Can we reuse this? So how are we thinking about improving that user experience for our customers and for our community also, right?
Right. And so I think the answer is yes. We are thinking about all those amazing things that you've talked about. And in fact, we have a lot of those. So we are working on enabling what would be a traditional GitOps workflow for your pipeline. So you can do your version control, you can do code reviews, you can update automatically, and update automatically applied when you merge. We have the ability to templatize things so that it's easier for new developers that are onboarding. It's always, as you said, it's sort of like this amazing exercise and mental gymnastics to create a pipeline as code. So why would you have to recreate it? If you have something that works for you, we want to make sure that you can templatize that. And then,
Is there
so
a UI around it? This is my stuff, because first I just, have to see how easy it is for me to use that thing. So I was like, okay,
right.
is it a UI to edit that code? Is this something that I have to do it on, like, with some fancy editor that I can use?
So they are working on a UI. We have an amazing UX designer right now. And he's working with the team to come up with just overall, in general, that's where you can see some of like these, I like to think of them as grace notes in terms of usability throughout this entire thread. And a lot of that comes from having someone who's an expert, and their sole job is to think about that user experience. And so having that UI and developing the UI so that it does flow in a more natural way instead of creating a lot of context switching is one of the things that we are in fact working on. And I think the important thing with that is, a UI can be as, it can be just as distracting as the other means of kind of context switching that you have. And so we want to make sure that as we're building this out and as we've added it, I believe Fernando did, he did a video for our last release of that version of the UI. So I think, we're going to continue to iterate on it, and we have some of the beginnings there. And we just want to make sure that it really does address and does address the user needs and makes it easier. So it is closer to that like one click and done type of a thing, which it'll never just be one click, but we're going to reduce the number of clicks for sure.
No, that IDE integration, right? And hints while you're typing your template, showing the hints. And I think it will be very useful. And I would love to see how this thinking is actually getting transformed into the code.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing one more theme around all of our product areas to make it more Kubernetes native, right?
Yep.
I see another offering here as Packard, pipeline as CRD.
Yep.
Right. So these are like different offerings, right? These three are like different ways of codifying or defining.
Absolutely. Yes, they are. So we have people who've been using Armory know it as Dingy. We have it, Dingy is essentially the pipelines as code. Then you have the Packard, which is Kubernetes native. So people who are using Kubernetes are used to CRDs. So we wanted to make it so that it's again, reduces that context switching that people have to go through and as they're using disparate tools. So we wanted to create a cohesive experience. And then we have the managed pipeline templates. And so the great thing with that is you mentioned nesting. And so that's where you're going to see some of that. So each of these adds adds additional features, as well as like the templatization, which is a very difficult word to say sometimes. So it provides all of that for our end users, which means that new developers that are coming on don't have to reinvent the wheel, that you have something that is a little more standardized. It is something that you can come up with like that golden pipeline. And all of these different tools allow, depending on how your organization works, makes it a little bit easier for you to do so.
This is very valuable. Thank you so much. This next topic is on the top of the head of like every customer that we talk to these days. How are you thinking about security? Where are the vulnerabilities? Who are fixing it? Who is responsible for it? Right?
Yes.
And especially the financial customers, how do we codify the policies, right?
Yep.
How do we make sure that they're part of whatever we are running in pre-prod? Those policies are catered to the production environment also.
Yep.
How are we thinking about, and I've seen some bizarre feedback and, very direct feedback around that fiat is so difficult to work with. You have to define RBAC, you have to do multiple different things in multiple areas, go to Halyard, define your accounts there, then define your RBAC, the permissions and all. So it's the whole experience around is a kind of nightmare right now, and it's very fragmented.
It is. And, uh, fix it again, Travis. Travis did an amazing job given the constraints that he had to build Fiat. But as going back to the whole building and over engineering thing, I think the great thing about having customer success and product kind of coming at it from that user experience instead of just a straight engineering experience has allowed us to come up with some features like creating the Terraform named profiles. So that's an improvement in terms of permissioning. As we worked on the Cloud Foundry Cloud Driver, we knew that the important thing with the Cloud Driver is to work with Fiat as it is today so that it doesn't bypass things, because until we build out that connective tissue, it needs to work with it. So as we built out Cloud, we ensured that Fiat was a part of it. So I think there's just a lot of parts and pieces that are associated with it. I think the other aspect is Policy Engine, helping with some of this RBAC piece. So Policy Engine, on the face of it, you're probably like, policies, what does that have anything to do with permissions? But it has everything to do with permissions, because if you think about something like, I believe it's like PCI DSS, you need to ensure that there's a second person that takes a look at your code before you deploy it. There's other rules and regulations where the person who deploys the code can't be the person who kicks off the pipeline can't be the person who approves it, which is, I think, the PCI DSS. But there's, you might have security scans that you need to do. You have other things that are your best practices. And just ensuring that Bob, who might be a junior dev, doesn't have access to production and can take everything down. All of those are permissions or policies. So policies become part of your permissioning. And we use Open Policy Agent as the underpinning for our policy engine. So that's one of the things that we're looking at continuing to build out for RBAC with our policy engine. And then you mentioned vulnerabilities, my favorite. So I did a talk on this that was 2 days ago. Well, more than 2 days ago, based on when I recorded it. And the important thing about vulnerabilities and the open source projects is you need to ensure that you are handling those CVEs, you're handling those vulnerabilities. So we knew as we were taking a look at things, and we're starting to get questions from some of our, from financial services, people who are insurance, that people who are in retail and other agencies that are highly regulated, they care about vulnerabilities. So we need to care about vulnerabilities. And that means down to the open source project. So we have, via the security SIG, we have built out a vulnerability management process, and the security SIG owns that. So I would say anyone who hasn't been to any of the other talks about this, know that the security SIG, we welcome you to come and participate in that. The other thing that we've done is not only do we have down at like the root or the core project for Spinnaker open source, we also have a vulnerability management process for Armory. So that way we are doubling down on the security posture that we have for our financial institutions, because we understand that not only do we need to pay attention at the root or the core, which is Spinnaker open source, but also everything else that we build on top of it that we offer as that platform for our customers. So if you think about the provisioning management, you think about the extensibility, all of that stuff needs to be vetted to make sure that it doesn't have vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities are found every day. So it's something that you have to have this process that you look at on a regular basis.
Got it. So I believe then this should be part of our release process also, right? Is it?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Then how, with every release, the CVEs that we find are going to be addressed as part of that release notes and of
Ab-
that release, right?
Absolutely, they are. So if you think about any other kind of well-established organization, we're going to start to do that for open source as well, but Armory's already doing it. So if you look at, for example, Atlassian, I think everyone's used an Atlassian tool. Not, I would guess 90% of people. You can go to their website and you can see a security page, and it talks about with every release, the CVE that is associated with the release and the fix. And so we do that very same thing. So we are at the same level as an Atlassian in terms of handling security and making sure that it is top of mind, which I think is really important, especially considering what we're doing. We're helping companies to manage and deploy code.
This is very important, right? The largest banks, the financial sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Some of these vulnerabilities are actually blocker for them,
Absolutely.
right?
As they
And we were
should be.
like, right. And so it's like, it's on everybody's radar. And when we are very proactive around it, how we are fixing it, is it a process? We are making this part of the release, like how CloudRide does or any other enterprise
Yep.
software company does, right? Make it very open, and then the dot releases will have all the the release notes around what CVEs got fixed in, and so it's out and open, and it's very clear around what we are doing with all these security fixes that we are making in every release.
Yep.
This is very important, and I believe people who are listening to us for this talk, they'll be super excited to see how we are being very proactive around some of these areas. And not just security and compliance, but as we have talked about the developer productivity, right?
Yep.
But such important areas, right? Installation, configuration. Do
Yep.
I have to get the smartest engineer on my team to manage Spinnaker, to make sure that he or she can operationalize Spinnaker? Or should I talk to them about the next use cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know we're thinking about policy-driven deployments also, right?
Yes, absolutely. Policy-driven deployment, that is also an area that's near and dear to my heart. So I think of policy-driven deployment as it's this concept where it allows you to focus on pipeline creation, and that pipeline creation is based on your policies and the governance that you are required to follow. So it's like your best practice, your policies, and your compliance. So if you think about all the rules and regulations around that, that's really what makes up your pipeline if you think about what a pipeline is. So policy-driven deployment is just kind of flipping the game a little bit so that your focus is really on creating the most kind of protected, secure way of delivering code.
Yes, and that's what we say, that how customers are trending,
Mm-hmm.
that flywheel, right?
Yep.
If we see customer trending faster from one stage to another, and the recommit is happening as a non-event, that's the big win for me, for
Yes.
my department, for everybody who is interacting with customers all through and through,
Yep.
right? And that is nothing without the product team helping us, defining a vision, taking that vision to the next level, and making sure that everybody is part of that story, and the inputs are taken from every different field and how they're making decisions at Armory. And I thank you so much for listening to us, taking our feedback, and making sure that customers are central to all our thinking that we are doing at Armory.
Absolutely. To me, that is 100% what makes product fun. And it isn't possible, to be perfectly honest, without a team where you have that collaboration and is willing to share that information. And I know that you and other team members are always willing to bring product onto the call and do it in a really positive way for everyone so that everyone can be successful. It works. It's amazing. And I find it absolutely delightful. we are lucky to have you.
Thank you so much. And the feeling is mutual. All righty. So, didn't want to end this presentation uh, without talking about the ecosystem that we are in, right? We are still in the middle of pandemic. I hope everybody, all of you are listening to us, are taking care of themselves, not just their physical health, but their mental health too.
Absolutely.
Right? Just keep doing your best. We all are like trying to give 100%. Some days are bad, some days are good, but just take care of yourself. And the business is running as usual. We all know that.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much, team. Any questions for me and Beth?